Last winter, my girlfriend Tori vanished during our annual ski trip. It all started when I discovered she had slept with my brother, Ben. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. We had a massive argument right there in the lodge. I told her I never wanted to see her again. Angry and upset, she skied off alone into what seemed like a perfect day. But a sudden snowstorm rolled in, and Tori never came back. They never found her body. A year later, Ben suggested we return to the same ski lodge. He said it would help us find closure, that we needed to face our demons. Initially, I refused. How could we possibly enjoy ourselves with the memory of Tori's disappearance hanging over us? But Ben was insistent, so I reluctantly agreed. The lodge looked exactly the same. Beautiful, rustic, surrounded by snow-covered peaks. But instead of feeling peace, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Ben and his friends tackled the challenging slopes while I stayed on the beginner runs, trying to keep my mind off the past. But every corner of the lodge, every trail, reminded me of Tori. That evening, we gathered by the fire in the lodge. Ben was glued to his phone, live streaming every moment. He claimed it was for closure, but it felt more like he was exploiting Tori's memory for his social media followers. I tried to ignore him, but he kept pointing the camera at me, asking how I felt. My frustration grew with every passing second. The next day was even worse. Ben followed me around, filming everything I did. He added sad music and captions like "moving on" and "honoring her memory." By evening, I had reached my breaking point. When Ben suggested one last trip up the mountain, I refused. But then he made a promise. If I joined him, he would stop filming me for good. Reluctantly, I agreed. As we ascended the mountain on the ski lift, Ben pulled out his phone and started live streaming. He turned to me and said, "It's time to come clean, bro. Tell the world how you really feel about Tori's death." I was stunned. Before I could respond, he started rocking the lift violently. "What are you doing? Stop it!" I shouted. But Ben continued, his eyes wild with anger. "Admit it. You drove her away. You killed her," he screamed, shaking the lift harder. Panic surged through me as I clung to the bar trying to steady myself. "I didn't kill her. It was an accident," I yelled back. But Ben was beyond reason. He kicked at me, his foot missing and causing him to lose his balance. In a horrifying moment, he slipped and fell, plummeting hundreds of feet to the snowy ground below, his phone still in his hand, capturing his final moments. The silence on the ride home was deafening. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. Ben never got the confession he wanted, but his twisted obsession with Tori's death ultimately led to his own. I didn't kill Tori, but now I'm haunted by the memory of losing my brother in such a horrific way. That ski trip was supposed to bring closure, but instead, it opened a new wound, one that I fear will never heal. Camping really isn't my thing, but when Juan suggested a trip to California's wilderness, he was so excited that I couldn't say no. We packed our gear and drove out to the ranger station, picked up some maps, and got a few warnings about staying on the marked trails. Juan assured the ranger we'd be fine, and off we went. The hike was grueling. Despite buying proper hiking boots, my feet throbbed with pain. Juan, full of energy, barely seemed to notice. He kept talking about how beautiful everything was, but I could only think about how tired and sore I felt. Finally, as the sun started to dip below the horizon, I begged him to let us rest. He found a flat spot with a gorgeous view of the valley below and decided this was where we'd set up camp. Juan handed me the tent to set up while he went to gather firewood. He sprayed me with some anti-bear spray before leaving, which smelled awful, but made me feel slightly safer. As I struggled with the tent, I noticed it was getting darker and colder. An hour passed, then another. Juan hadn't returned. Panic began to set in. I reached for my phone, but it was gone. So were the map, the food, and all our water. Juan had taken everything. Why would he do this? My mind raced. I felt a surge of anger and fear. I had to get back to the ranger station before dark. But which way to go? Juan had led us through several confusing paths, probably to ensure I wouldn't find my way back easily. The only option was to head downhill and hope for the best. I left the tent and started my descent. The forest around me grew darker and more menacing. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs set my nerves on edge. Suddenly, I saw a large figure up ahead. Relief washed over me as I quickened my pace, thinking it was another hiker. "Hey!" I called out, but as I got closer, my relief turned to horror. It wasn't a person. It was a bear, and it had caught my scent. The bear stood on its hind legs and roared. The anti-bear spray Juan had used wasn't a repellent. It was an attractant. He wanted me to be attacked. I turned and ran as fast as I could, adrenaline surging through my veins. I could hear the bear crashing through the underbrush behind me. My heart pounded in my chest as I sprinted towards a cliff edge. With no other choice, I jumped, tumbling down through the branches. Pain shot through my body as I hit the ground, knocking the wind out of me. When I came to, I saw a young couple standing over me. Their faces were a mix of concern and fear. The man gently shook my shoulder. "Are you okay?" "No," I managed to croak. "I just jumped off a cliff to escape a bear." The woman quickly called for help on her phone. "We saw someone else up the trail," she said. "I think he's hurt." I struggled to my feet with their help, wincing in pain. It took only 5 minutes to reach the ranger station, but it felt like an eternity. An ambulance was already there, and a stretcher was being loaded. I didn't need to see his face to know who it was. It was Juan. His body was torn apart, mauled by the bear. I stared at his lifeless form, feeling a twisted sense of justice. He had set me up to be killed by the bear, but instead, he met that gruesome fate. The bear spray he used to lure me to my death had attracted the bear to him instead. The ride to the hospital was silent. The weight of what had happened settled over me like a heavy blanket. I was alive, but the horror of that night would haunt me forever. I promised myself I would never go camping again. That trip, meant to be a bonding experience, turned into a nightmare that left me scarred for life. Juan's betrayal and the terror of that night in the forest will always be with me. I've been teaching elementary school for years, but nothing prepared me for the nightmare that unfolded during a seemingly innocent field trip to Grapevine Canyon. My name is Tom, and I work at a dysfunctional charter school run by Janice, a woman who filled the staff with her family members. I was the only non-relative, and she treated me like an outsider. When Janice announced a field trip to Grapevine Canyon, I was surprised she chose me as one of the chaperones. I love taking kids on trips, so I agreed despite my reservations about her motives. The bus ride was noisy but fun. The kids were excited, and even I felt a bit of that excitement despite my unease. We arrived at the canyon, and I took half the students while Janice took the rest. Her group was mostly her relatives. The kids were amazed by the ancient Native American petroglyphs and the stunning rock formations. It was shaping up to be a great trip. As we were getting ready to leave, one of Janice's nephews, Parker, ran up to me looking worried. "Mr. Tom, we can't find Aunt Janice," he said. I told the kids to wait by the bus while I went back to look for her. I searched everywhere, growing more frustrated by the minute. Janice had broken the cardinal rule of field trips: never leave the students unattended. When I returned, the bus was gone. Panic surged through me. I pulled out my phone to call for help, but there was no reception. In a situation like this, I knew the best thing to do was to stay put and wait for the bus to return. But as the minutes turned into hours, I started to worry. Eventually, a white van approached. A man I didn't recognize got out and asked what I was doing there alone. I explained the situation, and he scolded me for wandering off. His tone reminded me of Janice, and when I looked into his eyes, I saw the same steely blue. He had to be one of her relatives. "Hop in," he said. "I'll drive you back to town." I didn't trust him. My instincts screamed at me to stay away. I reached into my bag and pulled out my pepper spray, something I always carried for protection. "Where are you from?" I asked, trying to buy time. "New Jersey," he replied, looking confused. That was all the proof I needed. Janice was from New Jersey too. Without warning, I sprayed him in the face. He screamed, clutching his eyes. I grabbed his keys and demanded to know what was going on. Through his cries of pain, he admitted that he was Janice's brother. Their whole family wanted to get rid of me. He was supposed to take me deep into the desert, kill me, and hide my body so it looked like I got lost in the canyon. My blood ran cold as I listened. I shoved him aside, jumped into the van, and drove off. When I reached town, I headed straight to the police station. The school bus was parked outside, and the driver, another one of Janice's cousins, was sitting in it. I snuck past him and found the students in the lobby. They looked relieved to see me. "Where's Miss Janice?" I asked. "In there." One of the kids pointed to a door behind them. "She's talking to the police about you." I told the kids to stay put and quietly approached the door. Inside, I heard Janice telling the police how I had abandoned the students and disappeared. Her nephew Parker was backing up her story. "No need to search," I said, pushing the door open. "I'm here. But you might need to send someone to help Janice's brother. He tried to kidnap me, so I pepper sprayed him and left him in the canyon." Janice's face turned white, and Parker looked like he was about to cry. The police quickly arrested her and her family members. The charter school was shut down, and I went back to teaching at a public school. That field trip was supposed to be a simple educational experience, but it turned into a nightmare I'll never forget. The memory of being left to die in the canyon by Janice and her family still haunts me, but it also reminds me to always trust my instincts. Mardi Gras was supposed to be a night of fun and escape from my dull desk job. The vibrant colors, the lively music, and the joyous crowd made it seem like a perfect getaway. But that night turned into the most horrifying experience of my life. I was with my friends, lost in the throngs of people. The festival was in full swing, and the air was filled with laughter and the sound of brass bands. As I scanned the crowd, looking for my friends, a man approached me. His bald head gleamed under the streetlights, and he had a full blonde beard with an unusually long mustache that covered his mouth. His eyes were dark, and his pupils were unnervingly dilated. "Hey there," he said, his voice slurred. "I've got $100 if you show me your, you know." The world around me seemed to go silent. I felt my stomach churn with disgust. "No, you creepy ass," I blurted out, turning away and muttering a curse under my breath. I pushed through the sea of bodies trying to find my friends. I spotted a familiar hat in the distance and made my way toward it, hoping to lose the stranger in the crowd. The festival was packed, and I weaved through the masses, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and unease. Eventually, I decided to take a shortcut through a narrow alley. The alley was dimly lit, and the noise from the festival faded into the background. I quickened my pace, eager to reach the other side. Suddenly, strong hands grabbed me from behind, pulling me into a dark corner. I turned around and saw the creepy stranger from before. His grip was like a vice, and he yanked me closer, pressing a cold knife against my side where the crowd couldn't see. "You stole something from me," he muttered loudly enough for the nearby revelers to hear. They glanced our way but quickly lost interest, thinking it was just a drunken argument. Fear surged through me. I struggled to break free, but his grip tightened. "Listen here," he hissed, grinding his teeth. "You will smile and pretend everything is fine, or I'll tear your belly open right here." My head spun as I realized the danger I was in. The knife pressed harder against my flesh, drawing a thin line of blood. I whimpered, tears stinging my eyes. "Please don't hurt me," I whispered, my voice trembling. He forced a smile onto his face and whispered in my ear, "Walk with me, and don't make a scene." He dragged me back into the crowd, the knife still pressed against my side. I obeyed, my legs trembling with each step. The festival continued around us, oblivious to the horror unfolding in their midst. I scanned the crowd, desperate for a familiar face, but saw no one I recognized. The stranger's grip never loosened, and his knife remained a constant threat. My mind raced, trying to think of a way out. As we moved through the crowd, the stranger's knife pressed harder into my side. "I've killed people for less disrespect," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. I could feel the blade digging deeper into my flesh, and I knew I had to do something before it was too late. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw David, one of my friends, wearing his signature fancy hat and Mardi Gras beads. He was talking to someone, unaware of my situation. Summoning every ounce of courage, I caught his eye and mouthed, "Help." David's face went from confusion to determination in an instant. He pushed through the crowd toward us, and I could see the moment the stranger noticed him. The stranger tightened his grip on me, and I felt the knife slice a little deeper. I gasped in pain. David didn't hesitate. With a speed and force I didn't know he had, he swung his fist at the stranger. The punch landed with a sickening thud, and the stranger staggered back, his grip on me loosening. I stumbled away, clutching my side, as David tackled the man to the ground. The crowd around us erupted in chaos. Some people screamed, others ran, and a few brave souls tried to help restrain the stranger. I felt weak and dizzy from the pain, but I managed to stay on my feet. The police arrived within minutes, and the stranger was arrested. David rushed to my side, his face etched with concern. "Tom, did he hurt you?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. He cut me, but I'll be okay. "Thank you, David, you saved my life."